Who profits from what occupies your mind? There is good research behind the central premise. A large study of online news found that negative wording increased consumption, while another study found that negative news articles were shared substantially more on social media. Research on creators likewise describes online attention as an economically valuable resource that can be converted into financial or symbolic gain. There is a question I think we should all ask ourselves more often. Who profits from what occupies my mind? Not just what you buy. Not just where you work. Not just what you invest your money in. But what you think about. Because your attention has become an economic resource. And once you understand that, you may begin looking at the modern information environment very differently. Every morning, millions of people wake up and reach for a phone. Before they have had coffee, before they have spoken to their spouse, before they have had a quiet moment with themselves, somebody is already competing for their attention. A headline. A notification. A video. A political argument. A celebrity controversy. A crime story. Somebody saying somebody else is destroying America. Somebody saying somebody else is destroying your community. Somebody telling you that men are the problem. Somebody telling you women are the problem. Somebody telling you the economy is collapsing. Somebody telling you the economy is booming. And before you know it, your mind has been occupied for an hour. But here's the question. Who benefited from that hour? You might have been angry. You might have been frightened. You might have been entertained. You might have been outraged. But somebody else may have received the thing that has become incredibly valuable in the digital economy. Your attention. The business of keeping you interested. We often think the internet is giving us information. And it is. But there is another way to look at it. Much of the modern internet is competing to capture and retain human attention. That's because attention can be converted into money. Views can become advertising revenue. Followers can become customers. Engagement can become sponsorships. Outrage can become clicks. Clicks can become subscriptions. And an audience can become a business. That doesn't automatically make the content dishonest. That's important. A person can genuinely believe what they're saying and still benefit financially from your attention. Those two things can exist simultaneously. The problem begins when we forget that there is an economic incentive behind the attention we're giving away. The rise of the citizen commentator. We've entered an era where almost anybody with a camera, microphone, and internet connection can become a commentator. Some are excellent. Some do serious research. Some provide information that traditional media overlooked. And some are simply repeating what somebody else already said. A story appears on one platform. Someone reacts to it on another platform. Someone else watches that reaction and makes another video. Then another person responds to that video. And suddenly one event has generated dozens or hundreds of pieces of content. The original event may have happened once, but the commentary about it can continue indefinitely. And every person in that chain has an incentive to keep the story alive. That's when something interesting happens. The news event becomes the raw material. Your attention becomes the commodity. And the commentator becomes the distributor. But what about the person sitting at home? You might see somebody sitting in a bedroom, garage, basement, or home office telling you, "I'm a journalist." Maybe they are. Maybe they aren't. The title isn't really the point. The point is, what is the business model? Are they reporting something they independently verified? Are they providing original information? Are they interviewing people? Are they investigating? Or are they taking something somebody else posted, reading it aloud, adding commentary, and sending it back into the same social media ecosystem? Because there is a tremendous difference between reporting information and repackaging attention. And we as viewers have to become sophisticated enough to recognize that difference. The word allegedly doesn't make everything journalism. Here's another issue worth thinking about. The internet has created an environment where someone can make a serious accusation while protecting themselves rhetorically with one word. Allegedly. Allegedly, this person did this. Allegedly, that person said that. Allegedly, this organization is involved. And suddenly an accusation becomes content. But ask yourself, was it verified? Where did the information originate? Was there a primary source? Was somebody independently contacted? Was evidence examined? Or did the creator simply see another person's social media post and build a 30-minute video around it? Because repeating an allegation does not magically transform it into a fact. And repeating it 10,000 times doesn't make it more factual. It only makes it more familiar. Fear is extremely valuable. Now we come to something even more important. Fear gets attention. Researchers have found that negative language can increase people's consumption of online news. In one large experimental analysis involving millions of impressions, each additional negative word in an average-length headline increased click-through rates by about 2.3%. Another study examining news shared on Facebook and Twitter found that more negative articles tended to receive substantially more social media sharing. Think about what that means. If I tell you, everything is fine, have a good day, you might scroll past it. But if I tell you, you need to know what they are hiding from you, now you might click. Why? Because fear creates urgency. Anger creates urgency. Outrage creates urgency. Threat creates urgency. And urgency is very useful when your business depends on capturing attention. The 24-hour news cycle never gets tired. There was a time when you watched the evening news. The broadcast ended. You went about your life. Today, there is no ending. The news cycle doesn't sleep. Your phone doesn't sleep. The notifications don't sleep. The algorithm doesn't sleep. Something is always happening. And if nothing significant is happening, something insignificant can be turned into significant content. A celebrity said something. Somebody posted something. Somebody responded to the post. Somebody responded to the response. And now everybody has something to talk about. The cycle continues. Because silence is terrible for an attention economy. If you're not watching, clicking, commenting, or sharing, the machine isn't getting what it needs from you. And social media has changed the meaning of important. Here's where we need to be careful. Something being popular doesn't mean it is important. Something being viral doesn't mean it is valuable. Something making you angry doesn't mean it deserves your attention. Something appearing on your screen repeatedly doesn't mean it is the most important thing happening in the world. It may simply mean that the system has learned that you respond to it. Research on YouTube recommendation systems has found evidence of a feedback loop. Recommendations can influence what people consume, and that consumption can subsequently shape further recommendations. In other words, your attention doesn't just consume the information environment. Your behavior can help shape the information environment that comes back to you. That's powerful. The algorithm doesn't know your soul. The algorithm doesn't know whether something will make you a better husband. It doesn't know whether it will make you a better father. It doesn't know whether it will make you wiser. It doesn't know whether you'll sleep better tonight. It doesn't know whether the argument you're watching will improve your life. It primarily has signals about behavior. You watched. You clicked. You commented. You shared. You stayed. And from those behaviors, systems can learn what holds your attention. That's why we need something technology cannot provide for us. Judgment. Don't blame the influencer for everything. And this is where I want to be fair. The creator is responding to an incentive. The platform is responding to an incentive. The advertiser is responding to an incentive. And the viewer is responding to human psychology. Everybody is participating in the same ecosystem. So the question isn't, why are these people trying to get my attention? Of course they are. The better question is, why am I giving it to them? That is where personal responsibility begins. You can be informed without being consumed. I'm not suggesting that you stop watching the news. I'm not suggesting you stop listening to commentators. I'm not suggesting you become ignorant of the world. Quite the opposite. Become more intentional about what you consume. Know the difference between information and entertainment. Know the difference between reporting and commentary. Know the difference between evidence and allegation. Know the difference between being informed and being emotionally manipulated. And most importantly, know when enough is enough. You don't need to know about every argument happening on the internet. You don't need to have an opinion about every controversy. You don't need to respond to every outrageous statement. And you certainly don't need to allow strangers on the internet to determine your emotional state. Don't let somebody else spend your attention. Here's something I've been thinking about. We are extremely protective of money. If somebody walked into your house and took $100, you'd probably have something to say about it. But if somebody takes 3 hours of your attention, we often don't even notice. And those 3 hours are gone. You cannot deposit them back into your account. You cannot recover them. You cannot invest them tomorrow. Time spent is time spent. That's why your attention may be one of the most valuable things you possess. And if you don't decide where your attention goes, somebody else will. So ask yourself 3 questions. Before you click on that next outrage video, ask, who is making money from my attention? Second, what emotion is this content trying to create in me? And third, will knowing this actually improve my life? Those 3 questions can change your relationship with the information environment. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not click, not comment, not argue, not share, not react. Just walk away. The Smoke and Reflections question. That's really what Smoke and Reflections is about. Not telling you what to think. Encouraging you to think before somebody else thinks for you. Because there are people competing for your money. There are people competing for your vote. There are people competing for your loyalty. And increasingly, there are people competing for something even more fundamental. Your attention. So the next time you find yourself 3 hours deep into somebody else's argument, ask yourself, who profits from what occupies my mind? Because your mind is not public property. Your attention is not an unlimited resource. And your peace is not something you should surrender simply because somebody figured out how to monetize your emotions. You don't have to abandon the world. You just have to stop allowing the world to occupy every room in your mind. Protect your attention. Because wherever your attention goes, your life follows. And that's something worth reflecting on.